thing for sure is that these disasters often demonstrate how out of touch government are with the people that they govern. Whether it was the East Palestine row disaster, where the Biden administration, who claimed to care a great deal about the environment, responded badly, or famously Hurricane Katrina, where George W. Bush messed up, and it took Kanye West to point out that often people in power don't care about the interests of ordinary people, or specifically in that case he said black people.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
But we can equate that to those without power who are affected by the behaviour of powerful institutions and interests. Does Joe Biden's dismissal or inability to immediately comment suggest a similar lack of compassion, empathy and understanding for those affected by this tragedy?
Any comments on the rising death toll in Maui?
Will you come talk about the Hawaii response, Mr. President?
Yeah, it's probably not best to sort of smile and say no comment. If your tenure as president has been dogged by claims of senility, ineptitude, corruption and being out of touch, probably best not to just grin and say no comment when confronted with a disaster of this magnitude. So let's look at this in more detail. Claims about the deadly wildfires in Hawaii, including that shadowy forces orchestrated the disaster with a laser beam, have gained traction online. Now, some people will say, oh, that's dangerous misinformation, that should be shut down. I think the opposite. Discuss it, look at it, investigate it. Either it's true or it's not true. We can decide for ourselves. Let's get excited. The posts come from a variety of sources and accounts, but generally imply that elites or government agencies deliberately started the fires. Videos and images claiming that wildfires were not a natural disaster and were instead caused by a directed energy weapon, a laser beam or explosion, have been viewed millions of times. But the video was originally a viral clip shared on TikTok in May showing a transformer explosion in Chile. So that particular video was not legitimate or authentic, it says here. An image of a church on fire in Hawaii has been viewed 9 million times, with people claiming it shows a laser beam rising from the church into the sky. However, the image has been digitally altered. No laser beam or ray of light can be seen in the original Associated Press photo. So it seems that some investigations have been done that disprove these original claims. But why is there this sense of exploitation, total mistrust? Why does the idea culturally exist that elites aren't being honest with us, that the establishment is exploiting us? Is there evidence for that elsewhere? And even in the case of Hawaii, its fires and its land, is there any evidence that elites might be trying to manipulate, campaign and socially reorganise the economic conditions of Hawaii? Stay tuned to the end of the video. Alongside the directed energy weapon rumours, speculation spread in viral posts that some of the island's rich inhabitants and second homeowners deliberately started the wildfires to grab valuable land in Lahaina. One viral video includes claims by a podcaster that native landowners in Maui have refused to sell land to investment management companies and rich locals. Well, that would be pretty easy to prove, I guess. The cause or causes of the fires on Maui are still unknown, but no real evidence has emerged to suggest they were deliberately started as part of a land grab. So there's no evidence of those claims at the moment. Let me know in the comments where you stand on that. But let's not forget that even with a historic conspiracy theory like the assassination of JFK, the information after all of these years is still heavily redacted and controlled. Let us remember that during the start of the pandemic, assurances were offered to pharmaceutical companies that they would be immune from future prosecutions, and some of that legislation already looks a little dubious, doesn't it? And once more, we're not allowed full access to the information. This lack of transparency leads to suspicion. As always, I bet the mainstream media will say, we have to do something about this misinformation and disinformation. These conspiracy theories are hurtful to the real victims of this fire. But what they perhaps won't address is what the economic conditions in Hawaii are actually like, and whether or not there is a degree of exploitation of the indigenous people. And let's just cast our minds back and work out, why is Hawaii part of America? Give that a little bit of reflection, and that might help you to see where we're going with this. So even outside of these fires, are there economic and land-related issues that are a little dodgy and dubious? Will any of these homes that are rebuilt be targeted at rich landowners? And what has the government support of this issue been like? Elizabeth Pickett, co-executive director of the non-profit Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization and co-author of Maui Wildfire Plan, developed in 2014, told the Wall Street Journal that measures like ramping up emergency response capacity have been stymied by a lack of funding, logistical hurdles in rugged terrain and competing priorities. priorities. A bit like East Palestine. When you investigate that disaster, it seems that the opportunities to update the hardware were neglected. People aren't being paid. The equipment ain't working properly. Oh no, there's been a disaster. And then when the disaster happens, what's the response? It seems at odds as well with the concern and care that's expressed towards the environment, but usually in areas where it's possible to regulate and control the activities of ordinary people rather than persecute, prosecute, and control the actions of elite organizations and businesses. Interesting. What are these other priorities? While the US government, backed by the corporate media, continuously claims there is no money to build infrastructure and take measures that prevent such disasters from happening in the first place, there's an endless supply of funds for war and financial bailouts of the banks and corporations. Again, it's a point that's been raised before. Where do you want your tax dollars going? To support the infrastructure of states that are within the American experiment, like Hawaii, or do you want your money being sent to Ukraine to perpetuate a war that doesn't seem to be going very well at all? The US government, through both Democratic and Republican administrations over the past 3 decades, has spent trillions of dollars on imperialist wars that have killed and displaced millions of people, and at the same time funneled similar amounts into the financial system to ensure that money-making for billionaires on Wall Street continued without disruption. Oh, I wonder why there's so much mistrust, so much room for conspiracy, pontification on the actions of these elites when this kind of policy is ordinary, accepted to us, when so much of what ought be crime and corruption remains legal because of the way these systems are organised. There's no wonder that people entertain outlandish conspiracy theories. It's difficult for us to find sponsors and advertisers because we're always trying to bring down the financial system and the government. Doesn't make sense as an economic model, really. Thankfully, we can find commercial partners and sponsors bold enough to back us because they believe in you. If their products of use to you, check it out. And please stay to the end of this video because I really try my best to make them funny. Going online without ExpressVPN is like changing into your pajamas with the curtains wide open. You may not have anything to hide, but why give those pervy peeping toms the chance to invade your private parts? In fact, if you go online without a VPN, internet service providers can snoop on your activity and see every single website you visit. And then it's perfectly legal for them to sell this information without your consent to advertising companies and tech giants who then use your data to target you back at you. But fear not, help is at hand. When I use ExpressVPN, ISPs can't see my online activity because my identity is anonymized by a secure VPN server and my data is encrypted for maximum protection. Yours could be too. It's easy to use. Just fire up the app and click on one button to get protected. Protect Me app. Protect me. And it works on all your devices, phones, laptops, and even routers. So unless you like the idea of being turned into some sort of data cow with your udders being squeezed continually into data love milk stinking in a bucket, join me and use ExpressVPN. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/brand. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/brand and get an extra 3 months free. Let's go back to other me, bringing down the government and global corporations, this time with privacy. And yet, the response of the political establishment has been an astounding degree of disinterest and the shirking of any responsibility for the disaster. Aside from a 3-paragraph White House statement on Thursday, President Biden has said nothing about the staggering loss of life in Hawaii. We had a similar disaster in our country, the UK, when the Grenfell Tower burned down and many lives were lost. It's been a bureaucratic disaster and nightmare trying to investigate the causes of that fire. It seems that there's some culpability in the safety regulation, but no one's going to get convicted, no one's going to get charged, and no one's going to get compensated for the loss of life. One might think that if you have big, well-funded governments, these are the kind of disasters they should be dealing with, protecting their own populations, ideally ensuring that disasters of this nature don't take place at all, but when they do take place, that people are taken care of, rather than curiously having this inordinate amount of care for people over there in Ukraine. Odd that their care gets to be brokered by Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, and this kind of care doesn't seem to have the opportunity to skim profit off the top. The people of Maui are shocked and outraged that there were no warnings to residents as the wind-whipped flames were approaching and then engulfing Lahaina. Multiple survivors have told television reporters that there were no officials on the scene to help people escape the flames, no means of communicating with missing loved ones or contacting hospitals or emergency agencies. Even days after the worst of the fires had ended, thousands of people left homeless without food were left to fend for themselves. Reports have come in that the provision of urgently needed food and money for working class residents is being organised and run entirely at the community level by volunteers. No infrastructure where it's needed. I hope that the government will be similarly